everybody. Welcome to the Legacy Podcast. My name's Bill Dupenthaler.
And I'm Mike Conan, and this is a podcast for disciples who want to make disciples. Well, everybody, welcome to the Legacy Podcast. I'm Mike Conan, and I'm with my good friend Bill Dupenthaler, and we are getting this chance to talk a little bit about our secret sauce at Legacy. We're going to take the next few weeks to talk to you about what we're trying to do that we think will change the world. And I was thinking about secret sauces here, Bill. Okay. And I want you to think about it. I'm going to tell you my favorite secret sauce, but I want you to think about it.
All right.
So I am not normally a secret sauce guy because I don't like pickles. And almost all of them have pickles in it. I don't know why, but even In-N-Out Burger has pickles in their, secret sauce. So, but I will say this. Have you ever been to Raising Cane's?
No.
Okay. So it's a chicken place. And my kids, when we go places, one of the things we tell them is, hey, if we're traveling and there's a place there that you've heard about on TikTok or whatever, we'll go, it'll be fun. So we went to Palm Springs. And the kids like, we got to go to Raising Cane's. And I said, I thought we already went to Raising Cane's. We were in Florida. And they're like, no, we haven't been. Trust me, we haven't been. I mean, okay, maybe we were going to go. We didn't, or whatever. So we go there and they're like, you have to get this chicken sandwich with the secret sauce, or get tenders and dip them in the secret sauce. And I was like, I don't know. The secret sauces, I'm not sure if that really is. But sure enough, I ordered it and it was so good. I mean, it's probably just ketchup and mayo. I mean, be honest, they're all probably some combination of that. Yeah. But I'll tell you, it was so good that we went back 2 more times to get the secret sauce. I got the nuggets, I got the chicken burger. And, when we left, both my son and I were like, man, I think we would rather go here than In-N-Out Burger. And we lived in Southern California, so we love In-N-Out Burger. But there's that moment where you think, man, that secret sauce is really what put this sandwich over the top.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever had a secret sauce where you're like, man, that's the one right there?
Oh, well, so I don't know do you ever get HelloFresh meals?
Yes, we have.
Okay, so if anybody is a HelloFresh person, we talk about this all the time. Like you get the HelloFresh meal, you dump it out on the counter, you kind of look at it and go, all right, like it's a little thing of chicken and some carrots and a couple of potatoes and like, how good is this going to be? But we always talk, it's their sauces. And they are good. Yeah, they have these little combination of these sauces, and we end up eating this and going, this is so dang good.
Right, grilled onions. They love grilled onions too, those HelloFresh people.
Yeah. So anyway, the secret sauce is huge. My other sauce, so if the question is like favorite secret sauce,
yep.
For me, it's some version of spicy Mexican sauce that, like every time we go to Mexico, I do confess we will sometimes bring a bottle of tequila back, but we also always bring back...
Lord have mercy on your soul.
Exactly. We also always bring back like 2 or 3 bottles of sauce because at these different restaurants and places, they have these amazing like hot sauces that you don't see them, in stores here. And we're like eating these sauces and go, this is so good. And so we'll buy it, one of the sauces and bring it back. So anyways, secret sauce.
Yeah. Well,
that's the topic. Yeah. Sauces. For the next 5 weeks, we're talking about sauces.
Well, a secret sauce is obviously a special ingredient that really makes something work. And in fact, in the case of Raising Cane's, it's what they built their whole chain around, frankly.
Because everybody's got chicken.
Yep.
But we've got the secret sauce.
Yeah, and maybe they do a little something different with their chicken too. I don't know, but somehow they do. And In-N-Out Burger, same thing. They've got their secret sauce. They also salt their patties pretty good, which is great. But there's other things, but it seems like that secret sauce is that moment where it's like, oh, yeah, that's what makes it. Remember when we were growing up, Big Mac commercials?
And the secret
lettuce,
sauce.
Onions, and secret sauce, and the whole thing, and there's that whole sense where that's what really makes it work. And in Legacy,
so Joe, our producer, is flashing us this little sign saying, "Okay, guys, move on from the secret sauce thing. Come on, get going."
Well, it's all part of it's all part of the buildup.
Thank you, Joe.
Legacy is has a secret sauce.
Yeah.
And we exist because we're trying to do something different than other people are doing. And the thing that we're trying to do differently is, quite simply, we want to not just equip people with the right knowledge. We don't want to just get them in the right churches. We don't want to just get them in all of these right things in life.
Not a little program.
Nope. We're trying to teach people to be relational.
Yeah.
We're trying to teach people to build intentional relationships. We're trying to reproduce ourselves. We're trying to be creating people who would build relationships. And so these next 5 weeks, we're going to be talking about our secret sauce. We're giving away the farm here. So if anybody were coming into our programs, this would be the number one thing you would hear for us is how would we become people who make relationships so that we can make disciples? Because you have to make relationships to make disciples, I think is kind of the case that we would make.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Would you agree that that's kind of our secret sauce?
Oh, absolutely. And I guess the question today that we're going to just take a look at a little bit is, so why do we build relationships?
Right.
You know, let's make a case for our secret sauce, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there's one other sauce too that I forgot about that we'll have to talk about at some point. But have you ever met the man at Dixie's Barbecue?
No.
They have this place out of business now, but this guy used to go around with a pot, and he would put this sauce out there that was, I don't know what kind of peppers it came from, but it was so hot. If you put a little tiny bit on the end of a toothpick, you'd be tasting it for 4 hours. And they called it the man sauce. In fact, I even bought some and brought it back. But that's all to say, some people love sauces. Some people can't stand them. And this, I think, is one of those sweet spots where if you're good at building relationships, it works really well. If you're bad at building relationships, it doesn't work so well.
Yeah.
And so part of what we're going to assume is that we want to build healthy relationships. And so as we're thinking about this whole podcast series, we're going to be talking about building healthy, good relationships.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So you're our resident theologian.
Somewhat.
So
We're at the bottom of the barrel. If I'm the resident
between you and me, you're the theologian. Okay. So I guess, but we always want to ask the question. Is it biblical? I mean, is there a biblical case that we can make for being relational? Because maybe not.
Well, I think that is, in all honesty, where we should begin.
Yeah.
We don't try to make this a Bible study podcast, but when we're talking about why we should do something, that should be the first thing any believer says.
Right.
Is this biblical? And we could start in Genesis 2, which we'll get to in a second. But I think if we were to start, in all honesty, to make a case biblically, it would be this. Well, who is God? God, we know, is three persons. From the very beginning to the very end of time, God is by nature relational.
Yeah.
Father, Son, Holy Spirit in a relationship in some crazy way with each other. Sometimes we get a glimpse into that, and sometimes it's left a mystery. But we know that there are three persons in this Godhead, in this wonderful, awesome mystery of who God is. And so the person who made us, the being that made us, the spirit that made us, God, by nature is relational.
Right.
And so whatever we think of our foundation for relationship building, that's where it would start, is the triune nature of God. But then we can look at how God made humans. And of course, for those of you that are the biblical scholars, Genesis 2 and the story. And it's this great poem in the story of creation. And God makes Adam, and he's working the garden, and he makes all the trees. He makes all this other, water, sun, all this stuff. But then he looks and he said, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's good. Oh, it's so good. And then he looks at Adam and it says, it's not good. And what wasn't good?
He was alone.
Right.
It was not good for him to be alone.
Yeah. And that was the thing that he looked at right away and said, it is not good for man to be alone. And this is a verse that has been a centerpiece throughout history as far as humanity goes. Isolation, alone. In fact, if people are doing punishments in prison, where do they put them?
Solitary.
Isolation. It's the worst. If people are in concentration camps, if people are caught behind enemy lines, one of the things they do is they isolate them to try and get information out of them because it drives the soul crazy.
It's not good for people to be alone.
And so I think that we can make the case that in general, the Bible calls us to some sort of relationship with each other. Now, in that case, you could say, oh, maybe it's just that he didn't have Eve yet, and that's the case. We should all be married. And if
It's
we're
a case
married,
for marriage, right?
but I don't think that's the case at all. I think what it's saying more clearly is he doesn't have anybody. He's looking around and he sees, well, that person's got people, that animal's got people, that animal's got people, that animal's got, I don't have anybody. Where is my people at? And so it's that moment where you think we all need people. We all need people around us, and God made us to be in relationship with each other. And we cannot get around it. In fact, it's a central part of who we are made in God's image is he is a relational God. We are relational people when we are at our absolute best.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking too, as you're talking about that, and what did God do in order for us to know him? John 1. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And then verse 14, and the Word, Jesus, became flesh. He became a human being and lived and dwelt among us.
Right.
Relationship.
Yep. That's what Jesus modeled, right? Yeah. I mean, as we see him in the way that he lived his life, he was not, just spending time with the Father in heaven. He did do that, which we've talked about in other podcasts. He spent time with his Father, probably every morning, in fact. But the rest of his time, he spent in relationship with us fallen, crazy people.
Yeah.
I mean, the scripture in John 15, Jesus is talking about after he's been with these guys for 3 years, he summarizes how they've been together. And he says, I do not call you servants, but I call you friends.
Yeah.
Because I've shown you the Father.
Yeah.
I've shown you the Father's business. I've brought you into my life.
Yeah.
I've brought you in, and I've shown you what God wants me to show you, but I've also given you a glimpse of who I am, and I brought you in. And that's what we think of when we think of the core of relationship is bringing other people into our lives, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, relationships. So again, making the case for relationship-centered ministry, legacy, life, that kind of thing. Just thinking about, like for me, when I first went to Young Life as a high school kid, and those of you that know about Young Life, incredible programs, incredible camps, all kinds of things that they're really great at. But Young Life is an organization also that they would say that their centerpiece is relationships and building relationships.
It's one of the things they do really well.
Yeah.
One of many things. One of many things they do.
But I remember that my first Young Life club I went to, it was. For me, as a sophomore in high school, they were way too excited, way too much.
Yeah.
Like I didn't want to sing, I didn't want to play these stupid games. I was just hoping, like, please,
you were too cool.
Please don't call me up there up front to go, shove marshmallows in my mouth or something,
Yeah.
And but afterwards, and I'll never forget this. And this is a long time ago now.
Yeah.
Afterwards, the head guy. And his name is Doug Burley. He came up to me. I had never met him. He came up to me and he introduced himself. Relationship.
Yeah. Yep.
And he said, "Hey," he asked my name, and well, is it your first time? Yes. Well, a bunch of us are going to go out to A&W Root Beer.
Nice.
And we're gonna hang out for a little bit. You should come.
Right.
And I did. I went, and he saw me come into A&W. He flagged me over. What do you want? It's on me. And, he bought me a root beer, sat down, and I don't remember exactly what the conversation was, but essentially he was getting to know me, and that relational side of it made such an impact on me. I think if it would have been just about the program, I don't know if I would have gone back.
Maybe if there was a cute girl, you would have gone back.
Well, that's how I got into Young Life leadership later on.
There's a relationship,
different kind of relationship. But yes, my calling to ministry was not the most spiritual.
Sanctimonious.
Yeah, exactly. But But yeah, but that whole relationship, and that's a guy it's been with me ever since. Still to this day, I'm in a relationship with Doug. And so what a crucial thing that was for me.
Well, and it's interesting the way that you describe the encounter too, because Doug did not react to you. He didn't wait for you to make a move and say, "Okay, Bill, you made the move. I'm going to respond." He went up to you. He talked to you. He invited you. He included you. He bought you something. And so he went out of his way to purposely build a relationship with you.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't the one who invited you there. I mean,
Right.
you had just shown up. And so when he saw you, he thought, you know what? This is a guy who's made in God's image, who I don't know if he knows Jesus. I don't know if he knows the love of God. I want him to experience the love of God through me.
Yeah.
So he was invitational. He was inviting. He let you know that you would be welcomed. He let you know that you were valuable. And then he was generous towards you so that you could experience in some way a touch of who God is through the personal contact you were having with him.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. And I think about that same thing with our Lord, and how he did his ministry. He was purposely investing in these guys.
Yeah.
And, I think that this would be a good moment to just hit a slight rabbit trail for just a second and say, one of the things that has blown my mind about Jesus to this day, it still blows my mind. Number one, that he called Judas. And think about it. He was so close with Judas the night that he was betrayed. He said, the guy who's dipping in the bowl with me, that's the one who's going to betray me.
Yeah. Yeah. Sharing.
And he built this relationship with him and invested in him, even though he knew it was not going to turn out well. So it wasn't always just to get an end result. Like he literally was relational by nature.
Yeah.
And loving by nature. And then the other part that stands out to me, and you've probably thought of this before too, Bill, but this is one of those weird Mike things that I think about that probably no one else in the world really thinks about, but that's life. The Bible talks about three guys that were really Jesus's close friends, that Jesus really invested in. And it was James, John, and Peter. Mm-hmm. What's fascinating is the Bible always lists James before John.
Yeah, there's always Peter, James, and John.
Yes. And John would later become this great apostle. He would write, we have numerous books of the Bible, probably 5, that are written by John's hand. And he's this pillar in the early church, the disciple who lives the longest. And we have, do you know how many stories we have about James?
Not many.
I mean, think about this. This is one of the 3 guys the Lord put the most of his time into. Okay. So these were his closest friends, his biggest investment. And James is the first to die for the faith.
Yeah, he was the one that was martyred really early. Yeah.
And so you're thinking the Lord knew that was going to happen.
But he was still one of his 3 key guys.
Yeah. And so I'd only offer that as a freebie to say, when we're thinking about relationships, it's not just for an end game. It is that because you want people to meet Jesus. You do. Your job is not to be Jesus, but to introduce people to Jesus, right?
Yeah.
And to show them Jesus and then introduce them, just like Doug did to you. But there's part of me that thinks, one of the things we have to say from the very beginning, if we're going to talk about building relationships, is you do it because you love people.
Yeah.
And because they're made in God's image. And you want them to know what love is like and experience it, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, you know what I was thinking as you were saying that too? It was always Peter, James, and John. But John certainly didn't feel that from Jesus because how John viewed his relationship with Jesus when he would write about it. Yeah. The one that Jesus loved,
Exactly.
But isn't that a cool thing though? You think about it, like, wouldn't it be awesome if, we have multiple relationships, but every one of those individual relationships, if they were to write about you, they would say, oh man, it's Mike, and I'm the one that he really loves.
Yeah.
Doug Burley. Oh man, I'm Doug's favorite. I'm the one that he really loves. And Doug's got thousands of people that would say that about him. I know he does.
And we could talk about a lot of different things here, and for the sake of time, I'm not going to get into too many. But I'll just say this: if I look at my life, the people that have impacted me the most have always been through relationship. I have a couple of guys who I call my friends, who I read their books and I listen to their teachings, but I consider them friends because of just this deep impact that they've had on me. But those are not the guys who called me into ministry. Those are not the guys who taught me the greatest things about how to do ministry. Those guys, the people who did those things, were people who had personal relationship with me, people who invested in me, people who included me when other people weren't including me, people who were generous towards me, people who let me make mistakes and show me so much grace and love. Like, those are the people who transformed my life. And I could give you a list of a litany of people, about 10 guys who did that at different points. And so anyway, probably don't need to dig into that too much more, but I think both of us would say, scripturally speaking, we're relational people and we're designed for relationships. Jesus modeled building a relationship. And in our own personal lives, we have experienced when others have impacted us, it's been through relationship. Now let me flip it around and say, what about in our ministry? Where have you seen the deepest impact in your ministry? Has it been through this podcast where we don't even meet people maybe? Or has it been more when we have been in a personal relationship with people?
Well, and you obviously already know what I'm going to say.
I don't. I'm waiting on pins and needles here. I don't have any idea.
Well, I mean, it's always been through relationship, and one of the cool experiences is to have as a person, and certainly as a follower of Christ and a person that is a disciple who makes disciples, is when you have a conversation later on with people, and whether it's you hear them telling their story, or whether you're just talking directly with them and they're telling their story, and it doesn't even matter whether it's about me or about you or about anybody, but almost always, in fact, I think I get, well, almost always, there are exceptions, but almost always somebody's telling their story about their life and how they, I was going to say who's impacted them, and then that's about relationship. But if the question is, how did you come to faith? How did you come to Christ?
Right.
Almost always it has to do with a relationship. Even if it was like, I went to a Billy Graham crusade. Well, how did you get to the Billy Graham crusade? Well, it was my friend so-and-so that invited me and brought me there and sat next to me, and I didn't know it, but he was praying for me the whole time, and
seed planting, all
that kind of stuff.
Somebody else reaped the harvest, perhaps. But there's a relationship involved in some way, shape, or form.
And certainly I could say for me personally, people that I've had plenty of my Doug Burley moments with other people as well that would say, well, I remember Bill, when you first met me, and blah blah blah, and yeah.
I would say those are definitely in my ministry the moments I think I was at my best is when I was building relationships with people. In fact, I would say, looking back on my pastoral ministry, because in pastoral ministry it's a little different than Young Life, because you are preaching and you are doing all of these leadership things, and you're doing all 30 different things. But if I could go back and give myself a talk, it would be focus on relationships. Focus on relationships. And in my worst moments, I was not doing a good job of tending to the most important relationships. And sometimes that wasn't my fault, and sometimes I just didn't know better. There's a political saying that's going around now that is, "Don't waste a good tragedy." For political gain. But, one of the things I learned as a pastor was, and this I think is applicable to disciple making, is never waste a tragedy in somebody's life, because that's an opportunity for a relationship that is a God-given thing. I mean, you and I both now, we have a handful of people that are going through tragedies that we're walking through this with as just a part of their team.
Right.
We're in their balcony like we talked about last week, and we're cheering them on, and we're walking through them amidst the furnace. And that's a relationship that is going to really mean a lot to them and could potentially change them, and for good.
Yeah. It's interesting because this whole idea, and we're kind of wrapping up here, but making the case for building relationships being our secret sauce and legacy. I mean, when you look at how Jesus modeled that, and like when you read the Gospels, it was always, and Jesus went out, and Jesus went out, and he went to go see so and so, and he went to Levi's tax collector
Yeah.
booth, and he went down to the shore to talk to the guys that are fishing, and he's always going, and we call that a missional approach, to
Yep.
evangelism and to reaching the world is going, and when would you say that started shifting in the church from missional to like more like
Programmatic, yeah.
let's build programs, and let's, instead of going out to them, let's attract them to come to, so being a missionary meant having a great program.
Well, in the church, it's a long history, 2,000 years plus the years before Christ. So it's been a long history of being on point with relationship and being off point. And I would say, even in the Reformation, we didn't see people coming back to relationship as much as we saw them coming back to right doctrine. And so it's been hundreds of years since the church was, this is what we're doing. We are doing relationships that are going to change the world. So that as Jesus' prophecy would be fulfilled, by the way you love one another, that is how the world will know that you belong to me. And I don't think that the church has always, I think, done a good job of helping the poor. The church, I mean, as far as compared to every other group in the world,
Right.
The church has always cared about the poor. The churches in that I come from, anyway, have always cared about right doctrine. But the idea of building relationships, I think, shifted with your age, which I'm going to, as the boomers took over, bigger, better. We saw a pretty big movement in the church, which they called the church growth movement, which churches became, instead of it being a local place where people build relationships, build support, build mission, it became a place where you're trying to build bigger, better. And it kind of is a result of World War II, where people are building these cities. And so the building mindset is a central part of what is happening. And Lyle Schaller and others were influencing these 70s and 80s to have churches think in terms of church growth is the most important thing. And so you want your church to grow, and the way you make it grow is you build a Field of Dreams church.
Yeah.
If we build it,
They will come.
They will come. And so what happened is these boomers started going to these super services where you've got people who, if you had a radio, it'd sound like the radio. If you're listening to the sermon, it is like, oh my gosh, this is the best speaker I've ever heard. And they have designed everything in the service so it's an experience for you that really draws you in. And so what ends up happening is you have this large gathering of people, but then you don't have a lot of relationships in there. And in fact, there's been a lot of recovery from that. And one of the recoveries is the small group movement in churches, where they're trying to get people into small groups. Well, we could still be big churches, but when we have everyone in a small group, I personally am of the persuasion that the church growth movement was probably hindered the furthering of the gospel more than it helped it.
Because obviously there are exceptions, but generally speaking, the program, the experience became the centerpiece.
Yep.
Instead of relationships.
Yes, and you ended up judging the church based on numbers.
Yeah.
How's our budget? How many are in your youth group? How many are in this? How many are in that? And having worked in the church for 20 years, that's the pressure I felt all the time.
Yeah.
How many people are in worship? How many people, are you saving? How many people Instead, I wish that we were thinking about, okay, how are you developing the people you have to build relationships with people?
Yeah.
And now, if I were to go back, that would be what I would do. And I think in my best moments I did, and the best churches still do that today.
Right.
And so I think we look at church history and we think that the best moments in church history have been that where they're developing relationships with each other first, which, like I said, the church growth movement, they even pushed that aside, but also developing relationships with those who've wandered and those who have fallen away. I think that's the best moments in church history. We would say. Anyway, that's probably enough for.
Right. So we hope that we've built a little bit of a case for
the secret sauce,
for the secret sauce, and why build relationships. And we're going to continue talking about relationships and this whole aspect for the next few weeks. I think it's going to be really fun, and we hope that you'll keep listening. We're so grateful for everyone that that has followed along, has subscribed. Thanks for those that share our podcast. We love to get the word out to as many people as we can because we really believe in the things that we're talking about. And we encourage you to check out our website, ourtruelegacy.com. Lots of great resources there, and we certainly appreciate those that are supporting us as well financially. And it's just such a privilege and honor to do this with you, Mike, and to do this together with all of you. And let's just continue.
I got one more thing real quick. Jump on the website too. We have our first retreat coming up, April 28th
That's
through
right.
30th, men's retreat. If this grabbed your heart thinking, man, I need to be more about relationships, what a great way, right?
Yeah.
And you could sign up right there at R2Legacy.
Yeah, let's remember to keep talking about that too. Well, because we want that to be an incredible thing. So now the tagline, I was almost there. Let's continue to go be disciples who make disciples.
Amen, brother.
Yeah.
Amen.